where it started for you. What was your first company?
I did a lot of work in emotional intelligence, and so that led to me kind of taking those principles and seeing how they applied to my children, how it applied to parenting.
Why were the suicide rates in both of those groups so high? And
what I learned was really just that ability to recognize and label our own emotions, to be able to then communicate that out.
What do you have planned for the future?
You know, I always create my own suffering. My point of struggle this month, it really is more surrender.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays Off podcast. Today, my guest is Supna Doshi. She is a purpose-driven entrepreneur dedicated to creating spaces and stories that support healing, connection, and the human experience and human growth. She is the founder of Swanee Gables, a nature-based retreat space on the banks of the Suwannee River, designed for reflection and renewal. I've stayed there and it is awesome. I've probably had the best afternoon of my recent adult life, sitting there watching that water roll by. She's also the founder of Alinea, a full-service video production company focused on documentaries, films, and long-form storytelling that amplify meaningful voices. She is also a mother of triplets and co-host of the Human Experience podcast, where she brings curiosity, spirituality, and lived experience to conversations in service of deeper understanding and collective well-being. Supna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Stavros.
You do a lot, so tell us about it. What is it that, why do you do what you do, and how would you what bucket would you put the whole thing under?
Yeah, it's funny. People say that to me. You do a lot, and it is one of the things that I love is that I don't feel like I do a lot, so it doesn't feel that way. Which is always a beautiful thing.
How do you do that? Because I feel like I'm doing a little, but it feels like a lot. so how do you manage?
Yes, I think a couple of things. One, I really was able to find my purpose and hone in on that no matter what form it took. And so I'm able to find my purpose and then apply it to whatever project or company or activity I'm doing. And so that makes it not work at all. It makes it fun and playful. And then doing less is more. And so although it sounds quantity wise, like I do a lot, on a daily basis, honestly, I do very little, and it's the very little steps that add up to what I have.
Do you have good support teams, or how do these things keep moving in between your availability to give them attention?
Yes, absolutely. Asking for help and accepting it was definitely one of my learnings throughout my journey so far. And so I have a wonderful support team in all of the companies and all of the projects that I work on. So I absolutely rely on them to feed in their energy to make it what it is.
So tell us, you said you found your purpose, and so it all feels like play instead of work. What do you feel is your purpose?
I think in simplest terms, it's just to show up and serve in whatever way, however that looks. It can look like creating a space for people to come to visit. It can look like being able to tell a story. It can look like making lunch for my children. It looks a lot of different ways, but it's where I can just show up and serve someone else. That's really what I look for before I decide to take on any task.
Let's dive into that a little bit, because I think it's stuff you hear people say, whether we're talking about The Second Mountain, I forget the name of the author of that book, or different, that message of when you realize you're here to serve, it all kind of becomes effortless. That is a message that we hear a lot, and I think it's really hard to believe on one side. So what was your journey? How did you come to that realization, and I don't want to say how did you come to at peace with that, but how did you come to realize that was your higher purpose?
That's a great question. I think that in and of itself was a journey. It was a lot of releasing of a lot of things I had been told or taught over the years, a lot of belief systems that I had around finances and the way things are supposed to look. It was a lot of letting go. It was a lot of surrender. I'm a big fan of Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment. As I journeyed and stripped away everything that I was not, I was able to really just boil it down to, if I can show up and serve in any moment of any day, that I'm fulfilling my purpose, and I'm joyful and grateful to be able to do that.
I think in my experience, what happened is I started to accumulate things and experiences and all kinds of stuff. And then I realized that with everything I accumulated, I actually ended up with more responsibility, not less. I actually ended up with more demands on my time, not less. And so I started getting to a point where I was like, I don't really want anything, right? If I kind of I want to eat, I want to have a comfortable house, I want to be around with my family, I want to have time, but that's about the limit of what I strive for. I want cool experiences too. I do like my adventures, um, but then it became just much more rewarding for me to say, well, okay, I'm here, I have those things. My personal ambition, it's not that it went away, but it kind of almost merged with serving. As if I'm like, I think about, I've done a lot of things with partners over my career, and it's just more meaningful if you have someone to share the experience with. I've done a lot of being the first follower, where somebody's starting a company and I'm like, yes, I'm your first follower. I'll help you get it off the ground. And that it's just been a very rewarding experience to help somebody else advance and move forward in their life.
It is, and I found like the best way for me to get unstuck, no matter where I am or what I'm doing. If I am stuck, I am working on somebody else's business. I am volunteering at a food bank. I am uh, picking up trash on the side of the road. That is my go-to tool for whenever I'm stuck, either in my own head
Mm.
or with a project or anything, just to go and do something else.
Tell us a little bit about where it started for you. What was your first company?
My first company was actually, my first company was a consulting company after I had the triplets. My background is all HR and talent acquisition. I clearly could not go back to a corporate job with three infants. And so I started a consulting company. I consulted on HR for a couple of years. That led to I did a lot of work in emotional intelligence. And so that led to me kind of taking those principles and seeing how they applied to my children, how it applied to parenting. And out of that was born WeGo Kids, which was an emotional intelligence parenting company that consisted of content and a small product line.
You want to tell us about it?
It was definitely just the most beautiful, energetic manifestation of collaboration and bringing together people who were all parents, who all shared this same purpose, that we want our children to be healthy and happy. And the form that it ended up taking was kind of like a modern day talk show. We filmed our own. We had five parents that all had different approaches to parenting, and we would pick a different topic, sit in my living room, and record conversations. One component of that was to make sure that kids stay really active, and to serve that purpose, I started a yoga clothing line. There were animals uh, designed after the yoga poses named after them. So it was like a puppy that did down dog and a frog that did frog pose. And it
Very
was
cute.
on a kids clothing line so that they would be attracted and inspired to move their bodies.
So it feels like, in a way, your history in HR kind of, puts you in touch with emotional intelligence, and then that kind of lays the groundwork for your consulting practice, which then leads to the company, and then which is like a talk show, you said. So does that then lead to the production company somehow? Because I know you're very active in the production company.
Yeah, so it was a lot of content creation. I wanted to put emotional intelligence in parenting in a really digestible format for any parent. And so it was a lot of content creation. And yes, I found myself loving researching topics, writing intros and outros. When the dad who was videotaping it for us would come back with an edit, I would say to him, "Oh, this dad said this. Can you put that clip in here? And can we change the frame of what you're showing here?" And um, I loved it.
Hmm.
It just brought me so much joy, and it was so easy for me to really weave together a story that was honest and grounded. That, yes, that then led to the production company.
So tell us about the production company. So what kind of work do you do there?
So it was all also based on emotional intelligence. The one statistic that I learned before I started WeGo Kids was that the suicide rates of children ages 10 to 14 had quadrupled in the last decade. And the motivation, one of the largest motivations, was how do I keep that from happening to my children? Through my work on WeGo Kids, I met a Marine Corps veteran who then educated me on the suicide rates of veterans, which was one in 22, was 22 a day at the time that I met him. And so it was an easy transition for me, focus wise, to be able to take the same principles and content and say, how can we then apply it to the veteran community that maybe struggles during transition? To give them things to hold on to hear. And from that, we actually got our very first client, which was a national veteran nonprofit that was committed to reducing that number of 22 a day. And so we partnered with them actually for a number of years, HUA, helping out our American heroes to provide content, to provide fundraising content. And they were our first client.
Why were the suicide rates in both of those groups so high? And was it different for each group, or is there a common thread? What did you learn?
What I learned was really just that ability to recognize and label our own emotions, to be able to then communicate that out, was really kind of the harder piece. Children felt a way, but they didn't know how they were feeling or how to communicate that out. It was very similar to veterans who had PTS from war or from any other trauma, that then were feeling things they didn't know what they were feeling. We often confuse anger with grief, with a number of different emotions, and really just being able to label that, sit with our emotions, communicate that out to others, and then to be able to respond and not react to our emotions.
The intrapersonal side of emotional intelligence, basically, like having greater awareness and understanding and articulation of what's going on inside. And that was in both communities. And
Yes.
was the content you created geared towards the kids themselves or towards the parents to build those skills into the kids? How did that play out?
It was geared towards the parents. I found that starting with myself, one of the things that I really had to understand, I did go through a severe postpartum depression, was that self-awareness of what was actually going on with me, and then the impact on my children, and then what tools can I go ahead and teach them now so that they start to build that toolbox. So that company, WeGo Kids, was entirely for parents. It spoke directly to parents.
It's amazing. I mean, so many parents are overwhelmed, entrepreneurial parents too. I mean, you've got a whole business, you've got a whole other baby, right? And family, which is the business and the employees. And so it is very easy to suppress your own emotions and not get in touch with them and just keep working. And then the journey of unpacking those is difficult. I can imagine, well, I know from experience, trying to get somebody else to unpack those and make time and space for that is a very, very difficult task. In my experience with my kids, it's actually been easier to do it with my kids than it would be another adult friend or something like that, because a lot of what I've done for my kids is simply just model it. Just be like, hey, I'm feeling really frustrated today. I've got this. And so normally, not oversharing, obviously, but just kind of giving them enough context so that they know what's going on in my life. Doing things like apologizing, doing things like just letting myself be a little bit more vulnerable and a little less perfect. I'm not perfect. No parent is, but kids, I remember as a kid, you think your parents are infallible, right? You think of them as complete adults that completely understand the world, right? And so
Absolutely. And I think as a child, often you feel as though your actions impact your parents and dictate their response and their behavior, and that is actually the furthest thing from the truth. So when you say you model that behavior, that is absolutely the most powerful tool that we have, is explaining. And I did that a lot when they were really little, because I would cry. If for the parents out there having three infants, like, you can imagine there are moments when you're done.
Hmm.
And so I would cry and I would just say, Mom is just really tired. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with my own emotions, and I'm working through those. And I continued that as they grew up. Mine are 13 now. But I found also, though, that in the Alinea production company, with the content that we created for veterans, it was veterans who were being vulnerable and sharing their own challenges
Hmm.
and modeling that
Yeah.
vulnerability that moved the needle the most.
So it seems to be that tactic of modeling is the one that it has the, whether we're talking about children or veterans or friends or whatever, that tactic of modeling is ultimately what breaks through, and other people can see it and replicate it.
Yes, I feel that level of vulnerability just opens up and gives permission for others to just say, "Oh yeah, me too."
Let's talk about that maybe in the context of different contexts. So I'm imagining that in the context of a marriage. I'm imagining that in the context of employees. I'm imagining that in the context of a business partnership. And sometimes in all those contexts, we want to protect ourselves. And so there's kind of how much you're protecting yourself from your own thoughts. So what's not even making your awareness, right? So first kind of trying to stop and dig in. And then there's the apprehension to share and to model. And then there is, the consequences. I mean, there is such thing as oversharing or dumping all of your emotional tiredness and on somebody else as if they're supposed to do something about it, as opposed to just kind of modeling healthy behavior. Um, I imagine your transition from overwhelmed mom of newborn triplets to where you are now was not a snap of a finger, you know how to do it. So what were some of the setbacks? What were some of the things that you did that you learned from?
I think the biggest key was being present and in the moment. That was my biggest challenge. It was the hardest thing for me to learn to, when I say I stripped away everything that I had been taught and was told. I was a big planner. I was the one who made my New Year's resolution goals for the next year. I had, things planned out, and that concept of surrender and understanding that you actually have no control over anything in your life, and that when you especially have three infants, that lesson is exacerbated because you it's like not having control on steroids. Like, it's really hard to explain, but it's a lesson that leaves no room for even imagining any sense of control. And so then the only option for me was to be present and in the moment. And I worked on a lot of tools that taught me how to do that. I remember standing in front of a stove and literally talking to myself, now I'm going to stir the pot of curry, and I'm going to stir it clockwise, and I'm going to stir it 3 times, 1, 2, 3. And now I'm going to, like, literally at that level. Now I'm going to sit down. Now I'm going to take a deep breath. Now I'm going to have a sip of tea. And it was literally doing that and practicing it over and over and over again. That translated to my children when we went for a walk, talking about, what do I hear? What do I see? What do I smell? And that was kind of the lesson for them. This is how we're in the moment. And that was actually more of a lesson for me. It was really at that granular level that I started to practice, that started to build that momentum.
That's a very interesting way to develop mindfulness. Um, I don't even know that mindfulness, I know mindfulness is the word that we use for this, but it feels more like nowness than mindful, right? Because you're not in your head. You're trying to get out of your head and into the present moment. I remember learning how to meditate at some point, and I've always never really enjoyed meditation because it felt like sitting there doing nothing. But what I was able to do very easily was be very present in the moment and say, I'm sitting here brushing my teeth, literally just feeling the toothbrush hit every single tooth. I'm sitting here having a cup of coffee. I'm, feeling the cup of coffee go down. So that was always easier for me than a sit down meditation was I'm going to do this task, but I'm going to do it fully and immersively in the moment. I feel like it's a kind of meditation in and of itself.
Absolutely. I also struggle with the sit down and
Seated
meditate. I know
meditation. Yeah.
Carlos
Yeah.
is a master of that. But the walking meditation is something that I can do
Yeah.
easily, and that I really enjoy doing.
Have you ever come across the book? I don't remember the author, but it's called 4,000 Weeks.
I don't believe so.
So the concept of 4,000 weeks is about the duration of a human life. And the author starts off with this very interesting observation, which is we experience time differently in the modern world than we did in the past. In the past, we wouldn't have thought about making use of time. We wouldn't be obsessed with having the best possible thing to do right now because a lot of what we were doing was living in the moment and in survival. Like we planted crops, we went after, we collected the crops, we harvested the crops, we tended them, we did. So whatever, the day was always full of things to do. And so we never really thought about, well, what is the optimal use of my time? We just kind of went about doing the things we do. If you think about that, that is a very, very different way of existence. If you didn't have to think about what you're going to do and you're just like, I'm just going to wake up and I'm going to do whatever happens today. You know what I mean? That is a far less stressful way to live in some ways, I
Yes.
guess.
Absolutely. I do find, though, a little bit that it relates to the roles that we had during that time is that everybody had their role, everybody performed their role. And so while they didn't necessarily know what the day would hold, they did kind of just know this is my routine, and they were happy and thrilled to do it. I find in the modern age we are releasing our roles and finding new ways to do things and different ways to do things, and what do we really enjoy and can we do more of that. And that definitely throws a wrench in the cog of peace sometimes.
That's true. We get to invent our identity. And so all of a sudden, I like your observation that we had roles. And so the roles very much dictated that behavior. So we didn't have to think about the behavior because it was dictated by the role. I don't know if they experience that as happy or sad. Like from this side, it's really easy to say and I'm sure a large part of people thought it was easy. And I'm sure some people said, this is not who I want to be. And so the reason we have the change over the years, I'm sure, is because somebody was unhappy with it. But we spend so much time thinking about our identities in an intentional way today that we never used to do. That's a very good observation. I read a book once that talked about living arrangements, and they said 500 years ago, even if you were royalty, you didn't have your own bedroom. You probably were in a bedroom with your siblings and maybe some cousins even. And so your sense of how you lived your life was in public. You lived your life in a way that you were always being observed by at least one other person. And so you behaved accordingly. And nowadays, you have three kids, you have four bedrooms in your house. You have, and a fifth one for guests or an office or whatever it is. Everybody has their own car, everybody has their own everything. And so we live very individualized lives with a lot of privacy, which puts that burden on us of having to answer the question, who am I? In a deep and profound way.
Absolutely. I love that observation. And as a parent, it now begs the question, who will my daughter be? And
Mm,
how will I now impact her ability to see herself in roles and to be able to shed those if she chooses to?
that's interesting. So tell us about the kids. How long ago did you have the triplets? How old are they now?
Yep, they were born in December 27th, 2012. They were Christmas babies, and they just turned 13. Two boys and a girl.
Do they know what they want to do when they grow up, or do they have interests in areas that they become obsessed with? Are they all very similar? Are they all very different?
That's so funny, Stavros. My one oh, I forget what pet peeve is when people ask them, what are you going to be when you
Yeah, yeah,
grow up?
yeah.
It's like a teacher will do it, a guidance counselor. I'm like, stop trying to make them grow up. They are children. Let them be children. Who cares what they're going to be when they grow up?
I love it.
But to answer your question, they are very science and math minded. They love solving puzzles and problem solving. They do tend to go that way. And so intentionally, as they were growing up, we spent a lot of time on art and music. And so really just focusing on trying to find balance in the brain between the two sides, and showing them that if they do get stuck on a problem or a puzzle, go do some art for a while
Yeah,
and your
yeah.
brain will figure it
I
out.
love it. I love it. Are they all very similar? Did they share a room? Do they have their own rooms? Just
Yeah, so they do, the boys have a room and she has a room. Nobody sleeps in their room. We actually play musical beds. They have a rotation. They take turns sleeping with their dad. They sleep with me, and then there's one single bed in their dad's room. And so literally we are a co-sleeping family still at 13. They still want to. They're not ready to go to their rooms. And I think we're kind of one and done. It's like this is the only experience. We don't have more children
yeah.
to experience these things with, so we kind of let them. We just are really in the moment and enjoying the fact that they want to
Yeah.
be with us and be in the same room until they don't.
Very cool. I had the pleasure of going and staying at the retreat center in the Suwannee River, and this is not an exaggeration. Uh, I sat there. I enjoyed watching the water go by in a way. I was relaxed in a way that I had not been in a decade. It really didn't feel like there was a single thing on my to-do list. And my mind was just there. I was with our mutual friend Carlos, who's also been a guest on the podcast, and he's a member of Routine Rebel. And we just talked and listened to music and watched the water go by, and it was absolutely peaceful. I don't know if I'm not a very woo-woo person, but if places have energy, that place has energy, that kind of energy. So, tell us a story. I know there is a story behind it.
Yes, I am a woo person. That place does have energy. I think that's really although I was raised there, I was 12 when my parents bought the property and I grew up there. I never
On property?
understood
You grew up
on
on?
property. I lived there. Our house was attached to the lobby. I heard the phone ring every 3 minutes and the bell to the front door go off. But I never understood the energy of the property until a couple of years ago when I took over managing it, and it really was the intentionality of this property has its own energy and its own purpose, and my job is to stay out of its way. So what can I do as a steward of this business to allow it to be for people what they need it to be when they come to visit? So it brings me so much joy to hear that it brought you what you needed when you were there. The story behind it is actually that my mom grew up in apartheid South Africa, and during that time, the whites only beach was the one that was closest to their family home. And so every Christmas, the guards would go home to celebrate Christmas with their families. And so my mom's family of really about 200 people would descend on this whites only beach, and they would set up camp for the day. They would cook for everybody. The uncles would kind of stand guard to make sure none of the guards came back. The kids would play, and the dads and the moms would cook, and they would just spend the day together as a family. As the sun set, they would light a campfire and sit around. And the first song that they would always sing is "Way Down Upon the Swanee River." And my mom's journey took her from, apartheid South Africa to India to America to living on the banks of the Suwannee River. And for her, that spiritual journey is one that you can only feel the impact of when you step foot on that land.
I listened to was it NPR? I think it was NPR who did a little piece on it, and they said that your dad bought it at auction and surprised your
Yes.
mom with it.
Yes. I grew up about 10 miles west of there, at another motel that we owned for a decade. And yes, the banker who my dad worked with that whole time had called him and said, it's, my mom would always send food for him. And so he called my dad one day and he said, "It's time for me to repay your wife for all of the food that she sent me over the years. And there is a place that's going up for auction. I really think that you should go. And I'm giving you an open line of credit, but bid whatever you want, spend whatever you want. I've got you covered." And when he got there, the river was lined with trees. You really didn't know that the river was back there until he walked basically through the jungle to get to the river and realized that it was the Swanee River.
And the article said that your mom was not happy at first.
Well, my mom lived for 10 years at a hotel running a motel, and we had finally sold it and moved to Gainesville, which is where I was in
Yeah.
school. So I was thankful I didn't have to drive an hour every day. And then when my dad was leaving that morning, she said to him, she said, "Do not buy anything because I'm done working. Like, I'm exhausted. Do not buy a motel. Do not buy a business. I'm not working anymore." And he went and bought another motel. But when he took her, and when she finally very reluctantly found the banks of the Suwannee River, she just knew that
No.
this was where she was meant to be.
What was the property before? I mean, it was a motel, but do you know anything about the history before you guys acquired it?
There was a father who built it for his then handicapped daughter, who needed a great deal of medical care. He was very well off, but he couldn't keep taking her to go see the doctors. She needed a lot of care, and so he actually built that. And the reason that he built the rooms was for the doctors and whoever was visiting the family to stay.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
And what does it do these days? I mean, tell us about some of the retreats that are held there. Tell us about who comes and stays.
Yes,
Is it for vacations, for families, for corporate retreats? What is it that you're hoping to do with it or already doing with it?
yes. The answer is yes, 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 yes. It's what I have found, and really what my goal has been with the Swanee Gables is really to stay out of its way. It does really attract. The universe brings to that property the people that are meant to be there. I've learned that over the last 2 years without there's not 1 ounce of doubt in my body that says people are meant to be here, that the universe brings them for whatever it is they need. Some come because they're grieving a child or a sibling or a relationship. Some come because they have experienced some tremendous loss. Some come because they've been diagnosed with something. Some come because they are reuniting with a friend or somebody they haven't seen. The stories are so varied. And that's really just the beauty of the place, is just seeing, oh, well, yes, what brought you here? How did you end up here in the same, spot
Mm.
on planet Earth that we are? And what is it that you need from this place? And inevitably everybody tells me that that's exactly what they get. So we have had family reunions, we have had weddings, we have had martial arts retreats, at the end of which everybody jumped into the river, which was just really a beautiful experience. And so we've had writers who come to write there, and artists who come
I can
to
imagine that.
create
Yeah.
there. And it really is just, it's energetically speaking, it is a place where your soul finds what it needs.
My experience was Carlos and I came up. We stayed one night, and then we went to see Mickey the next day at the temple of the universe, right? So, and his, in the time in my life where I was really trying to enter this new stage, his book, in particular, The Surrender Experiment, was a bit of an unlock for me. You know, I knew that I needed to let go. I knew that I was holding on to things too tightly. I knew that I was stressed, and I kept hearing the words "let go." I kept understanding that there was benefit to it, but I really couldn't do it. I couldn't actually do it. And when I read The Surrender Experiment, which I personally think that's the good first one to read. I like Untethered Soul, but the order I recommend to people is Surrender Experiment first, because that's the one where he talks about his life. That's the one where he talks about the story. You get to see it in practice.
Yes.
It's a story, which means it resonates, better. And then Untethered Soul is more of I don't want to call it an instruction manual, but it's more of a set of directions, a set of practices, a set of things to think about, and an approach to life. And so before you are ready to digest the approach, seeing this story, hearing the story in action went a really long way for me.
Yes, no, that is what resonated for me as well, was just really seeing it in real life, the way that he handled boardrooms and meeting rooms and all of the things that came his way, really by just stepping aside and staying out of the way the universe is unfolding, and really that faith that the universe always conspires for us. I think that's been one of my biggest lessons, and my biggest, I guess, coat hangers that I hang my coat on, is that the universe always conspires for us. And so whatever it is, whether I deem it to be good or bad, it is always for something that benefits me.
Was Mickey Singer a presence in Gainesville, growing up in Gainesville? I mean, you read the book, but he doesn't talk about, he talks about people coming to the property, but he really doesn't talk about kind of any involvement with the neighboring community or whatever. But it's very, very close to Gainesville. Like, so
It is.
did you
You will
know
love
who
this
he was
story.
growing up? Like,
So I went to a very small private high school in Gainesville. A number of years later, I was working at a yoga studio in Tampa, and came across a friend of mine who was 1 year younger than me. And when I say small, there were 30 people in my graduating class. That's it. And 30 people in the class below me. And so when I started WeGo Kids, this friend of mine, she's a vegetarian. She has 3 girls. And so one of the content creation things was how to teach children to crave healthy food. And I asked her if she would film some recipes for me, if I could go over. And so I went, and just to backstep a minute, I did struggle with severe postpartum depression with the triplets. I went to the doctor. The doctor said to me, I can medicate you, but you won't be able to take care of 3 babies. And so I really suggest you figure it out on your own. And it was during that week I was really distraught and trying to figure it out on my own, that I came across one of Michael Singer's interviews with Oprah. And what he described was actually what I experienced during my pregnancy. During my pregnancy, I had a very spiritual experience, which I can talk more about later. But it was where I really shifted into a different universe. I was filled with light at the moment that I was told that I was pregnant, and that light didn't leave me until the epidural went in, and that's when the light went out. And then this experience of all of the beauty that the universe is, I experienced the exact opposite of that. And so when I was sitting on the floor scrolling Facebook and I came across that video, Mickey was describing what I had experienced during my pregnancy, and I knew he hadn't been pregnant, so I thought, oh well, maybe there's a way to get for me to find my way back there to that level of joy and peace. And so I started reading his books, and they really did become my Bible. I studied his books, first The Surrender Experiment and then The Untethered Soul. Developed a set of tools for myself over the course of 2 years that pulled me out of that severe postpartum depression, that helped me in so many different ways. And so then the one day when I was sitting and filming with my friend, she asked me how WeGo Kids started, and I told her that Mickey, I told her about the severe postpartum depression. I told her that Michael Singer saved my life. And she kind of kept looking at me weirder and weirder. And then she put her hand on my arm and she says, "But Sapna, you know that's my father, right?"
So this was a friend you had from childhood, but you never knew that. Wow.
That was his daughter, Durga. So Durga and I went to school together. I knew her mother really well. I had no concept of who her father was. I would have play dates at our house and she and I would get together. And so I knew Durga and I knew Mrs. Singer. And not once did it dawn on me that the Durga he talked about in his book was my friend. That, oh yeah, I knew her name was Singer, but it never connected for me. And then, yeah, and then she
Wow.
said that. And then she said, "Would you like to come to Thanksgiving dinner?" And I was like, "Yes, please." So Mickey hosts a Thanksgiving vegan potluck every year. And so to answer your question at the time, I feel like um, the universe unfolds as it's meant to
Yeah, yeah,
be. And when our awareness goes to things, then that's when our awareness
yeah.
goes to things. And that energy, I think for me, the biggest beauty was that energy was in my life the whole time from when I was little till now at the age of 48. That energy has always been there, but until I was able to bring my awareness to it, did I not really settle in it and see what it was.
Well, it sounds to me like it's our awareness that's unfolding and not the universe. The universe is presenting everything to us all the time, right? And so we're surrounded by whatever we could want. It's our awareness, I think, that at least my experience has been that I change and I'm like, oh, wow, look what's been here all along, right?
Absolutely. Exactly. And I mean, I do feel like that's the beauty of life's lesson, right? Whether it's in business or personal or relationships or whatever, it's that no, everything is already as it is meant to be and is there for your taking. But until you learn and bring your awareness to you don't see it.
Sapna, tell us about the postpartum depression. Tell us about your experience. What was that like? How, I mean, from the spiritual experience you described to the moment the light went out to what tools did you have to use? I mean, I can't imagine a doctor saying you'll have to figure it out, right? Like that's a that's a moment of real responsibility, you know what I mean, put on you and saying not only is your own happiness at stake right here, but so are the lives of the three people you brought into the world.
Yeah, I feel a lot of ways it was a an example of how a lot of our veterans feel when they do transition out of the military, how children can feel when they do experience depression. It was a darkness. Some people call it the dark night of the soul. It was a darkness that I had never experienced. I would imagine committing suicide and cutting my wrists. I would imagine drowning myself in the pool. Like these thoughts were just so prevalent at night. I would sit alone by myself in the rocking chair while the kids slept and my mom slept and their dad slept. And it was just me and, my mind, which was definitely not in a good place, and my soul and my willpower that knew. I feel that the pull of motherhood was strong enough to keep me from actually acting, but the thoughts in the mind were. It was a darkness that I didn't know existed.
I don't know a lot about postpartum depression. Like, do people know where it comes from? Do they know why people experiencing it? Do they know about the brain chemistry of it? Like, what is known and what is speculated?
I think what is known is that, obviously when you're growing a child in your body, the hormones and the chemicals that are there, and then all of a sudden the baby is out, and then the body doesn't know how to handle all of those extra hormones and things that really have no place to go until they slowly, I guess, revert. Your body reverts back to. But then there's the breastfeeding and the nurturing of a child and all of those other emotional things that go along with it. I think that is known, but I don't think it's studied very well. I think that it's almost seen as something that can happen and it will subside in its own time. And yes, there's temporary medication to help you with the symptoms. But I think there's a lot of emotionality that goes along with becoming a parent. Yes, for the father, but I do believe more so for the body that is required to create that life. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were asking me if I got jealous of my children. And I said, yes, absolutely, because I was the center of my parents' world. I was the wife. I was what the world revolved around for a while. I was the daughter-in-law in the family. And then now I have these children and nobody remembers who Supna is or what she is, or she is just seen as in the role of the mother. And so that that in and itself brings a lot of transition that I don't think a lot of people are equipped to handle.
There was a business venture that I had started that went very, very, very bad. And I remember at the end of that venture feeling a whole mix of emotions. I remember feeling guilty. I remember feeling angry. I remember feeling sad. You can name them. And I don't know what happened, but in that moment, I had this conversation with myself, which I feel very, very lucky that I did. I said, what is this feeling that you have the strongest right now? And my voice inside said, I'm tired. I said, okay. So I said, we're just going to deal with tired. We're not going to deal with guilty. We're not going to deal with angry. We're not going to deal with sad. We're just going to deal with tired. What do you want to do? I want to sit in bed, watch TV, and eat chips. And that's what I let myself do. I let myself do that for 3 weeks. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, I was done. And I was like, oh, I'm not tired anymore. What's the next emotion? Well, I feel this, right? And so the ability to not try to deal with the whole onion at the same time and really just kind of deal with a layer felt like a blessing, Now, I can't imagine. I imagine almost the opposite happens when you give birth, because you have all those emotions, but now you have a new identity. So you have new emotions emerge on top of that. You can't sit and rest because you have new responsibilities. So I imagine almost the exact opposite of that is what happens.
Yes. Yeah, the exact opposite happens because it's so funny. Like, I cut my hair really short because I had to be able to take a shower, brush my teeth, and shampoo my hair all at the same time, because I had about 5 minutes of time before somebody started crying about something. And that's just kind of like a small example of, you have that, and then you have all of these emotions, and then you have all of these things. Like, it's just layers and layers and layers of being in quicksand. And until you can stop and be in the moment. And like you said, like, if you're able to bring awareness to one emotion and start working through that and then another one, that's really powerful. At the same time, if you don't have the ability to do that, just focusing on the present moment, because it doesn't leave space for a lot else. But yeah, I believe in reincarnation in this life. That we continually reincarnate over and over and over again, and our souls continue to grow and morph. And that was definitely a significant period of incarnation for me that I learned so much from.
I like that idea a lot. Reincarnation in this life, in that, we're constantly changing. I mean, the me that was the me a decade ago is no longer here, and this is a different version. Interesting, very cool. So that sounds like the powerful tactic that stayed with you, which is, because you said the things you did to come through this postpartum depression. So being in the moment feels like it was central. Was that it? Were there others? Can you describe it in more detail?
Yeah, I do have still a whole toolbox of things, which ironically I exhausted in this last period and had to start running because I couldn't get out of my head no matter which tool I reached for and tried. But I did a lot of different things. I stopped multitasking. I started single tasking, so I would not do more than one thing at a time. in everything. So I stopped brushing my teeth and washing my hair and taking a shower all at the same time, and just did one thing at a time. I on my calendar would always prioritize my self-care and put my walks on there and my time that I was going to sit and read a book. And then when I was going to sit and make myself a cup of tea, and I put those things on my calendar with reminders so that I knew that those, I had carved out those moments for myself to really, I guess, take myself out of that fight or flight status that I was in. Walks were huge. As you can imagine, with 3 children, they do say that one of the best things is movement for depression. And so I think the one skill also that saved my life was that my doula taught me to wrap 2 babies on my front and 1 baby on my back, and I and my 3 children would go out for an hour walk, and that was a life-saving technique.
Were they quiet during the walk?
Oh, they were just at peace. They loved it. They were attached to me, and I was in bliss.
Was this something you needed help with, or could you do it all by yourself?
She taught me how to be able to
Wow.
to wrap them all by myself, where I would wrap, I would put 1 baby on the bed with the wrap underneath them, and then I would wrap the 2 to my chest, and then I would lean back and pull the wrap and lift the baby up, and then wrap the 1 baby on my back. And she taught me how to do that, and I practiced and practiced to make sure nobody was gonna fall out. But those walks, I did walks every day. I would love to say journaling. It just wasn't a tool that ever worked for me, but I've heard journaling is amazing. Art is really beautiful. I love to do just to sit and color or draw or anything. Music, I made a playlist. It's very mood changing. Music is extraordinarily mood changing. And then I had my whole playlist of spiritual talks by Singer and Dyer, and really anybody I could get my hands on that resonated for me. And so it just depended on the moment and the time, and I tried different things until something worked and helped me shift my energy, and I do that to this day.
It sounds like you were rucking before rucking was popular with the the long walk with the
Yes.
journaling is something that I do selectively, and it's something that I try to turn people onto. And I'd love to actually dig into why it doesn't work for you, because I know it can be hard for some people, and I'm always trying to get them to do it. So I'd love to understand, what is it that doesn't work for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've tried to figure that out myself too, because I do know as a tool that journaling is so powerful. I think that my brain goes so fast, that neither my mouth, like I've tried voice memos, I've tried typing, like I just can't seem to synchronize my thoughts onto a piece of paper. And when in the moments that I do, when I can write, it's very little.
Hmm.
And it's like, I know I have more to say. I know there's more going up there,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure what the blockage is.
I used to hate writing, like with a big H. Like I was like, I don't want to do this. And in the 10th grade, I had an English teacher, Mr. Getch, and he said, I want you to start writing on a piece of paper and don't stop. We're going to just do this for 20 minutes and just don't stop writing. Just whatever, even if you don't know what to write, right? I don't know what to write. If you, whatever is going on, just, I'm sitting here writing on with a piece of paper. I hate what I'm doing. Like, it doesn't matter. Just write, just this, get your stream of consciousness out. And over the course of that semester in high school, Mr. Getch taught me to love to write. And it started off with stream of consciousness, and then it turned into, well, why don't you look at that and pick out the key things that were most interesting to you and put those and start creating an outline, and then kind of reordering them and then writing your final piece. Now, for a journal, there's really no reason to have a final piece, but that skill of just sit and write and don't don't think about what's going to come out. Let go of having it make sense. Let go of it being cohesive. Let go of all of that and just like write it out. For me, has served me amazingly. And I have to admit, I don't journal on a daily basis. I know some people do, but when I'm stuck, when I'm like, I don't feel right and I don't know why, a tool that I reach for is stream of consciousness journaling, where I just start journaling. And usually it's not that long before I'm like, oh yeah, that's bothering me. And then another thought will come out, be like, okay, hold on. Just it's written. Let me keep going. And then I'll end that and I'll be like, yeah, there were two or three things in there. The first two kind of are irrelevant. The third one was really the one I wanted to dig into. And so it helps me have a conversation with myself in that way. Um, so I don't I don't know. I don't know. Have you ever tried stream of consciousness, or do you stop before you?
I think I have tried that. I've tried prompts as well. I think ironically, like what you're talking about, especially the part that's bothering you, like I'll just sit and have that conversation with myself and go through the list and then find the thing that's
You'll
bothering
do it
me.
out
Like it's
loud.
more of like, yeah,
Yeah,
or in my head, like
yeah,
I'll sit
yeah, yeah.
still and say, okay, are my kids bothering me? Is their dad bothering me? Is my mom bothering me? Is like, this business bothering me? Is this project like, and just kind of go through until I'm able to sort it out. But I do love, I love the concept of writing. I'm actually a really good writer. I love editing. The irony is that Carlos and I are writing a book. And it's funny because the parts that I had written in the book, I don't remember anything I wrote. And so I gave it to him and he was telling me, oh, I love where you wrote. And I was like, I don't remember any of it. Like, I don't remember writing any of it. So, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that manifests. But I do love the idea. I could add that to my practice, just 10 minutes of stream of consciousness writing and see after a 30-day practice, what happens.
I think it's one and the same. I think sitting down and not trying to think through your thoughts while you're doing something else. If you can sit down and just think about it, I think that's equally good, if not better, to writing about it. Um, I've found both work for me. Normally, if I'm really stuck, I need to write. And I think there's something about putting it down that helps me move on. Whereas if I just try to do it in my head, if I go through three or four layers of thought, I don't know. I can't think anymore. It kind of the machine gets cluttered. So if you can do just the straight thinking, I think it effectively accomplishes the same thing.
I think what I have learned and practiced over the course of the last several years is really this ability of, Singer calls it the seat of self, or the observer, like to really be able to almost take myself out of me and observe myself from as a third party and say, oh, you're creating your own suffering because you're thinking about this, and you're creating your own suffering because you want this to be different than it is. And really just, it's almost comical to me that, I can have that awareness and see that I'm doing that to myself and still not be able to stop doing it to myself.
Tell us about the book, or what you remember about it.
Yes, what I remember about it. It's called Being Human. It is, so Carlos and I have a podcast called The Podcast, the Human Experience Podcast. We love having conversations about the human experience and how it ties into spirituality. I love talking about the universe and the energy flow and how things manifest. And, I've had a lot of experiences in my own life that Singer talked about in the Surrender and Experiment. And so I love kind of talking about those parallels and how other people have experienced it in their lives. And so the book is called Being Human. It started with the Marine Corps veteran that I partnered with in Alinea. And it includes stories from his own life, from my life, and from Carlos's life. And to call it a roadmap, I feel is a disservice. It does kind of, I think, break down our journeys into a map that we could say we used for ourselves. In hindsight, this is kind of what it looked like. I feel like going back to what we were talking about before, where you can, when you can hear something or read something and say, oh yeah, me too, like see yourself in that, I think that opens up so much more learning and so much more awareness to what more you can do in your life. And so really that's the intention, is for people to see some part of them in the writing, and let that seed plant and see where it grows.
Yeah. I love having conversations about just the human experience. And I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast, and it's you guys always talk about something that just feels really human. Just it just feels like an experience any one of us could have had a version of. And um, we are we are pattern finding machines. That's what our brains do. So if you listen to the stories of others, I think ultimately what it helps you do is find the pattern that's relevant to you for your life. And so there's wisdom I found in interviewing folks on this podcast. Everybody has wisdom. Everybody has some story, some knowledge, some experience. And I'm not capable of learning everybody's wisdom, right? But there is definitely overlap, and there are areas where I might get something.
I feel strongly that the universe speaks to us in so many different ways. And so in the conversations with other people, I feel like there are definitely messages, that will serve me either now or in the future. And so that's what I love most about the power of conversations and collaborations, is really just, it might not be something that you hear right at that moment, but when you need it, you will pull on it.
Yeah, also in terms of parenting, right? I was talking to a friend yesterday. I was saying, I say X, I say Y, I don't know what gets through. I also don't want to be bossy. I realize they're on their own experiences. And my friend said back to me, he goes, it's getting in there. And when the time comes, they'll pick at it. It'll be in their subconscious. It'll be somewhere in their memory bank, and they'll pick at it and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. That seems useful now. And it may not even be conscious, but it'll get through. And I think that's true, right? We hear all kinds of things, like who we surround ourselves with dictates who we are. Where we surround ourselves with dictates our, like, so that's the thing, is surround yourself with people having conversations of the type that you want and are drawn to, and more of that will show up in your life as a result. I think that's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
So what's next? What do you have planned for the future?
That's a great question. That's actually been my, I always create my own suffering. My point of struggle this month, it really is more surrender. It's more letting go of what I think I'm supposed to be doing, and really just feeling more of what I guess the universe needs me to do to fulfill my purpose and to help serve others. And so, yeah, we have, the concept of the book and more podcast recordings. The Swanee Gables coming out with its own podcast. We've recorded a number of conversations with guests, really to tie in that concept of, well, what brought you to the river, and this is what brought my mom to the river, and this is what brought me to the river. And so that some of that will be coming out. And just really looking forward to the new experiences. I think that that is what keeps life exciting and beautiful.
What's really interesting is, as I was asking you the question about what's next, and you were answering, well, I'm looking to be in service. My mind went, oh, what would be really cool for Supna to do?
Let me tell her how she can be of service. No, I love that. I think that it's so funny because we talk about these companies and these businesses that we build, but I feel like they build us. And I really love when a client will come to me and say, oh, you know who you need to work with? Like, you need to go and work with this person, and they really need your help, and they really are struggling. Okay, great. Like that. Thank you for that very clear direction on where I can go and be of service. So I love it. I love those.
What a great line. These companies we build, they really build us. What a great line. I could definitely attest to I've been built by some of these companies that I've tried to get off the ground and work with and grow and do all that stuff. Um, so at Routine Rebel, we're building a lot of really micro niche chapters. That's our thinking. Our thinking is that you can go join a big trade organization, you can go join a big entrepreneurial organization. That's great. Those things have their purpose. They'll help you grow your business, they'll help you grow your network and be very well connected. What we're looking to do is build these very small micro niche communities that are kind of identity first. And you can imagine couples that run businesses together, right? It doesn't matter if it's a plumbing business, it doesn't matter if it's an e-commerce business, it doesn't matter what it is, because the experience of being a couple running a business together has its own set of problems, its own set of solutions, aspirations. And another community could be about young women inside family businesses who are looking to take a leadership position. We're building a local one here in the Tampa Bay area for male entrepreneurs. It's local. What all of these chapters have in common is that at the end of the day, it's about the human experience. It's about wanting better health and wellness. It's about wanting better relationships and love in your life. It's about having a better mindset. It's about feeling wealthier. And I use the word feeling wealthier because I do think half of wealth is accumulation, but the other half is actually just letting yourself feel the abundance, feel the resources that you have at your disposal. So all of those communities will have that in common, and together we'll make up one big community and do adventures together and have wonderful stuff like that. And so I don't know, but maybe there's a chapter in the future for moms who are looking to start businesses and have newborns. And who knows that experience better than someone who had, three at the same time?
Yes. No, I love that. I love that. I know a lot of yeah, I know a lot of moms, and that is definitely a pain point.
It's a unique experience that their husbands can't understand, their business partners, if they have them, can't it's all consuming. It's a complete transformation of identity. It's what a very unique experience, and wouldn't those folks benefit from having each other to and under the guidance of somebody who's lived that journey, for support as they get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to.
That's very cool. Look, we'll explore it. What else? Is there any message that you might have out there for a new mom, entrepreneur? She's got a business. It's doing what it's doing, and she now has she has a new challenge in life, a new blessing in life. What are your thoughts? What should that person know?
Yeah, I think it can be a confusing message, but it's you can't have everything and you can have everything all at the same time, which feels to me like in each moment of every day, you're never going to have everything that you want. You are always going to feel torn between roles and responsibilities. And yet, if you can kind of take the step back and find a pace that works for you and prioritize the things on a daily basis, then you can have it all. You can be a good mom and an amazing entrepreneur and an amazing partner, and you can do all of those things. I think for me, and kind of what I've heard a lot, is that mom guilt is really strong. It's a societal thing, I think, that was invented, that moms feel but don't necessarily know that that's what that is, or how to release it. And so I love to always talk about moms about how to release that piece of it. That was a huge game changer for me.
What I love about what you're saying is that in the aggregate, you'll get everything done, but in the moment, don't don't try to do everything in the same moment. Give yourself to that moment fully. If you're being called to be, a mom right now, then just be that and forget that other identity for a moment until it calls to you. And so maybe the real skill is, since all of these requirements are calling, this is moms, but this is everybody. Since all of these demands are calling at us all the time, it's learning to kind of pick one, focus on it, and push the other ones back for a while, and just live it fully before you're ready to move on to whatever calls next, whatever you need to be in service to next.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I love that.
Sapna, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved our conversation.
Likewise, likewise. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time on Wednesdays Off.